Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Welcome to another Wizard101 video where we are going to talk about the most asked question that I think the Wizard101 community has ever had, and we're going to look at actual pieces of proof to answer the age-old question of what school this hoe is. What school is MERLE Ambrose? That is a question that we received several times from several different sources. It's definitely something that I think the community has been asking for a really long time. So why don't we explore the history of this question? So back in 2008 was pretty much the first time anyone was able to ask this question, right? The first people playing this game. And MERLE Ambrose actually answered the question in the message board. So this is where the question really started. However, the question was answered very very strangely, in my opinion. It wasn't the type of thing where it was like, it wasn't straightforward. So basically, right, this man's name Virtual Mouse said, anyone know what school Ambrose is? November 5th 2008. And Ambrose replies, as a developer, it's actually back when it was, I think it was J. Todd Coleman, this is all the way 10 years ago, the producer of the game. He said, and I quote, "I was apprenticed to a program long ago that fostered a cross-discipline approach to wizardry. At various times, I've spent a few centuries devoting myself to the study of each of the different magic schools. Currently, I'm studying the astral magics, a school of thought that's barely recognized and little known." And then he goes on a little bit about like what each of the schools stand for. I'll put the original post in the description below. But I think what a lot of people got out of that is that he is every school. Now, I am going to disagree with that blatantly. I don't think that means he's every school. I think that's further evidence that he had a school to begin with. If he really was every school, you don't really have to study it. That's what really grinds my gears, If he's studying the astral magics, that means he isn't an astral wizard to begin with. Same as if he's studying any one of the different magical schools, that means he wasn't at school to begin with. So I think that there's definitely a very real possibility that that MERLE Ambrose does have a school. So I think theory number one, that he is every single school, that's what everyone loves to say. I just don't buy it. I just don't think that's true. I know that MERLE Ambrose is a really cool guy, but I think he's bound by the same rules that all the wizards are bound by. So that brings us to theory number two. He's one of the original schools that we learned in Ravenwood. Now why do I state that? Okay, here's the thing, right? There are multiple reasons why I state that, alright? So I decided to go into his room, alright? I decided to do a little bit of snooping, alright? And he has a lot of shelves, alright? Now, go through the shelves, my mans. This is really weird, alright? I want to understand why this is a thing, alright? Look at the books, and you'll notice one school is very underrepresented. You see the storm, you see the fire, you see life, you see balance, you see death, and you see myth. There is only one book on this entire shelf that has ice on it. Why is that? I know there's a very good chance that it could have just been by mistake. I get that. But like, it just seems so out of place to me. It just really does. It's so weird to me that in all this shelf, that shelf, my man, you can look at other shelves in this entire ass tower, and there are very few ice books compared to the rest. There's one on this shelf, one on that shelf, and that's it. Every other book is every other school. Now, what does this really tell us? Well, why would you need a book to study a school that you already belong in? That's all I'm saying, alright? So that's what, so immediately I was like, alright, that has to be it. Alright, he has to be all, if he's really not all of the schools, he has to be ice, right? I mean, if he's one of the original, like, 7, he pretty much has to be ice, right? But you can't just go off of the books on his shelf. So I decided to do even more snooping, my mans. And here's what I arrived at, alright? Do you see what's in that crystal ball right there? He is looking at the fire school. Why is he spying on the fire school, huh? Like y'all saw it? We'll wait again. Look. It was a Bartleby. Then he's just peeping on some young wizard. I don't know, man. Like some weird ass young wizard. Another weird ass young wizard. But then look at what happens. he's spying on the fire school. That's Dalia Falbea at the fire school. Why would he specifically choose the fire school to look at? Unless, this is a stretch, I know, but unless he was an ice wizard and needs to spend more time studying fire. So see, if he's ice, he's probably going to need to spend more time studying fire because, you know, it's very opposite to what he's naturally inclined to. That's another piece of evidence that I think proves that he might be ice. Now, I know what y'all are thinking. There's a rule of 3 when it comes to evidence. My last piece of evidence, like, these are all stretches, I get it, but my last piece of evidence is that Merle Ambrose belongs to the Council of Light. Now, there's a lot of people in the Council of Light. There's Emperor of Mushu, there's Diego the Duel Master, there's the Lady of the Lake, there's Merle, and then, out of nowhere, there's Lydia Greyrose. Now, what makes Lydia Greyrose so special that she can be on the Council of Light? That doesn't make any sense to me, my mans. See, I was really thinking about that. Maybe Merle and her were friends from back in Avalon, but she's not from Avalon. We already know that she's from a world named Candyland, so that doesn't make any sense to me, alright? It really doesn't. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe there's another reason, alright? Maybe, you know, she's just really old. That would work, but Dworgen's also really old, so why is he not in the Council of Light? Dworgen has probably been around for a really long time. And that also doesn't explain why there aren't so many other people. You know, why is Lydia on there? We've met tons of old people all over the place, my man, all over the place. You know, it doesn't make sense why she's in here. My theory is that this was the school, maybe, possibly, right? That Merle could have taught, and Lydia was his replacement, and he had to mentor the ice professor. Or maybe just in choosing an ice professor, maybe he taught her a lot of what he knew because he's an ice wizard at heart, you know? So I think all of these signs could definitely point towards Merle originally, this is really important, originally being an ice wizard. Does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, it really doesn't. But what I am trying to say is, if we are to fight him in the future, I definitely think that he's probably going to be, if out of all the schools, the evidence points towards ice if he's one of the original 6 schools. There's one place that we really haven't talked about yet, and it is the Shadow. Alright, we haven't really talked about the Shadow School. Now, there isn't really that much evidence, in my opinion, that he is of the Shadow class, but there are a few things here and there. Now, if you believe truly that Merle Ambrose isn't actually telling us everything, he actually warned us to not learn Shadow Magic the entire time we were there. You know, it's just something that he told us not to do. When we were in Chrysalis, he told us not to touch the Shadow. He also knew how to counter Morganth, even when she was learning very, very, you know, like, different things. You know, like, there's a mystery that we've never really learned about, but we learned about, I wish I could show you guys the scene, and maybe I'll try to pull it up. But basically, right, the way it worked in Morganth's memories, actually, I'll show you the clip right now. Why not?
Enough! What is going on here? Malistaire, Morganth, enough of this madness. Malistaire, I expected you to handle this prudently, not to wage war on each other. And Morganth, oh, Morganth. You disappoint me.
Headmaster, I was only teaching Morganth how little she knows.
Never mind, Malistaire. Asking you to censure Morganth was my failing, as was my inability to teach her caution and mercy. Morganth, for placing Ravenwood in dire jeopardy, and for your utter lack of remorse, there can be only one punishment. I must take away your wand and your deck of spells.
No, don't you dare! Don't you think that you can do this to me for 1 second? I won't let you. I can't live without my magic.
And expel you from Ravenwood. May you find your true self out in the spiral.
No!
We must all learn our lessons from this tragic series of events, or else we will be doomed to repeat them.
As you guys can see, Morganth did something really terrible to Wizard City, and we don't know what it really was. We really don't. That's something that I've always wondered about. We don't know if it was Shadow. We don't know if it was death. All we know that she was on the path of Shadow. That's all we do know. And it's very, very strange to me that Merle was the one person that was able to completely, you know, power her down. Even technically Malister couldn't beat her at that age. You know, like, it's crazy. Merle was the only one who was able to make sure that she wasn't able to, you know, destroy all of Wizard City. Or, you know, even, like, kill Malister. You know, it wasn't going in the right way for Malister that entire fight, as we've learned from the memory. So what I really think is there's a very small possibility that Merle could have learned Shadow, knew it was really dangerous, decided not to teach it at Ravenwood and tell the young wizard not to do it, and he also had the knowledge and power to stop Morganthe from doing whatever she was doing. There's no telling if she actually knew shadow magic at that time or not. We really don't know that. We really, really don't. But we do know, however, that she did something that was definitely not controllable by any other wizard in Wizard City, right? If it was going to affect Wizard City, no one was able to stop it, except maybe Merle. So it would make sense that maybe they're both Shadow. And that's maybe even where Morganthe learned Shadow Magic. She might have learned it from Merle, dude. You know, because, like, she snooped in his books. That's what we learned from Gamma's memories and Avalon. He might have gotten upon some information that taught him some things, and Morganthe was a star pupil. So if he was Shadow, it makes sense why she's also Shadow. It would actually, like, start to line up where Morganthe even learned of shadow magic. Maybe it was from Merle himself. I was about to say Malister. Merle himself. You know, so I think it's a very real possibility that maybe this entire time Merle started off somehow as a shadow wizard, you know, very, very powerful, rare, one-of-a-kind type of thing. You know, like, spread his skills over to Morganthe, and maybe that's why he doesn't teach anymore, because he's scared of teaching anybody anything because of what they might become as a result of the power. Now, the very last theory is obviously that he could be a school that we just don't know about. You know, we got balance, fire, storm, ice, life, myth, death, and the astral schools. I still think there's a very real chance that maybe there's another school. Why do I say that? Well, one reason I've always thought this is because in the Arcanum, there seems to be quite a few benches right here, right? It's always struck me as very, very strange as to why there isn't a bench, you know, with the School of Magic right here. Now, you could say it's because, you know, there's no, there's like an entrance here, like the architecture would work, but I'm not buying it. I feel like they left a space here specifically to leave room for a new school, and maybe it would be revealed. We've always learned a new school with the coming of a new arc. You know, we've never had an arc where we haven't learned some new application, you know. In the first arc, we learned of another school, right? A second school outside of our own. In the second arc, we learned astral magic, and we also learned shadow magic. I don't see why we wouldn't learn more magic in our third arc, you know. So maybe it's a new school altogether, the School of Light, maybe whatever, you know, whatever it is. We really don't know. See, that's the thing. So I'm really curious as to what that's all about. You know, I would love to figure that out. I would love to figure that out. Maybe, you know, it's a school of whatever that is. No spoilers. I'm just saying that there's a lot of options here where they could just be completely keeping it vague for Merle, and it could be a completely different thing. That has nothing to do with this. So what do you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. Do you think he's Ice? Do you think he's Shadow? Do you think he's something else altogether, or do you still think that it's just he's just a born prodigy? He's all the schools anyways, no matter what I say? Y'all let me know in the comments below, but that's the evidence, and that's what I think. You know, he could be Ice. It's of all the original schools, it's most likely that he's Ice, if he is one of them, you know? Could be Shadow because of his past with Morganthe, or something else altogether, my bands. Tell me what you guys want me to make a theory about next on the channel in the comments below, and tell me what you guys think about this theory. If you're new, make sure to drop a sub, and if you enjoyed, drop a like. If somebody hasn't told you that you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, my mans. So stay awesome, bruh. And yeah.